will start with Captain America: A Brave New World or Brave New World. So interestingly enough, this is the fourth Captain America film, but it is actually more of a reboot because this is the first time that Sam Wilson, played by Anthony Mackie, who was previously Falcon, is taking up the mantle of Captain America on the big screen. So this film, he's kind of in his position, but somewhat at a distance still from the government he used to work with. But after meeting with newly elected U.S. President Thaddeus Ross, who was somewhat of an adversary to Sam in the past, the two kind of want to find a way to make amends. But then an international assassination plot begins, and Sam's on the case to kind of crack the truth, while Thaddeus Ross kind of wrestles with his inner demons and ultimately becomes a demon in his own right. But Ryan, before we talk about this film, you just watched Captain America and the Winter Soldier, whatever, the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, the Disney Plus show. That's kind of the prequel to this. What did you think of that? Because I watched it when it came out in like 2021.
Yeah, I thought it was all right. I mean, I thought it at least, offered a space to kind of develop backstory for Anthony Mackie's character and kind of preparation for, him becoming the next Captain America. I really love the moments with him and Bucky and Sebastian Stan. I thought a lot of those moments were really heartfelt at times throughout the movie or throughout the show. I mean, um, I will say like, and there's those certain Marvelisms where it's like, they like to kind of oversimplify like politics and just certain aspects of characters. So I think those issues kind of still remain in the show. But it was an interesting watch because it was like I kind of had to recalibrate my brain. It's back to 2021. I mean, it's 4 years ago. It was right after kind of like all the end game stuff, so it was just kind of interesting to, you know, remembering all that. And each time there was like a little nugget in the show. I was like, oh yeah, I remember that from when we saw this Marvel movie in college. So, yeah, I mean, I thought it was a fine show overall. Not my favorite Marvel thing in the world, but it wasn't a disaster.
Yeah, for me, it felt kind of awkward and a little stilted, and it felt like Disney was forcing this onto Disney Plus as a mini series to kind of reignite this new service and show their kind of
Yeah.
investment in it. And to me, it just felt kind of ungainly and kind of awkward as a show. It felt more like it should have been a movie, like a 2 hour, 15-minute movie.
Mm.
And it just felt very cluttered because you had certain things not have enough time, certain things had too much time. I remember the villain, I wasn't really a big fan of when it came out.
Oh yeah.
But you have the really some strong moments. I loved the dynamic with Falcon and kind of the old Captain America who was casted away
Yeah.
during kind of the civil rights era for kind of racial prejudice.
Mhm.
So there's some interesting things there, but it just felt like those moments weren't realized enough. And I thought it was unfortunate that the character wasn't able to have his big debut be on the big screen. It just was kind of a
Mhm.
bizarre decision. It's like, why not give him that spotlight when the other three Captain America movies all made, 700, 800, $1 billion, so
Yeah.
it was somewhat strange. But here we have his big screen debut. Ryan, what did you think?
All right. Well, for our four listeners that may have had their pitchforks ready for me talking about Deadpool and Wolverine last year, or if you listened to the movie extravaganza last week, you could put them away. I like this movie. I thought it was a major improvement to what Marvel's been putting out recently. And it's an actual movie, and I know that's kind of a low bar to reach, but that's kind of where we're at in my opinion. And I think there are still, I was kind of mentioned earlier, there are still those like kind of like eye rolling kind of Marvelisms throughout. I do think that this movie, um, the flaws that usually appear in Marvel movies are kind of few and far between in this one. I love how it's much more character driven. I love how it kind of allows Anthony Mackie and Harrison Ford, in particular, space to kind of flaunt their skills as actors. And I like how the film feels more contained and it kind of stands on its own, and it feels like it stands more on its own, even though there are still kind of like Easter eggs throughout. And despite it being a part of this grander universe, um, it feels like uh, I mean, I love you kind of mentioned this off air, man. I love the espionage angle as well. It felt, how those moments felt more grounded in reality. And I like how the movie in general felt more grounded in reality. Um, and as far as like, as far as the elements that were inserted from the TV show, I thought it kind of took some of the best elements from the TV show and put it in the movie. So I don't want to spoil too much, but I did. That's something I also appreciated with this movie. But yeah, this just felt much more alive to me, and I think Anthony Mackie has a lot to do with that. He brings a lot of kind of realism to his Captain America. He can be kind of very like steely, but also very kind of lovable and compassionate and very approachable. He brings a real like kind of humanistic
It's
element.
a good action star role.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
And
And
I
I
think
would,
he has a big
yeah,
personality too, which helps a lot.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
I think before we've seen him as kind of the side character, he'd
Hmm.
have some good moments of comedic relief with
Hmm.
Sebastian Stan's Winter Soldier. But it's been really cool to see the character kind of spread his wings, so to say, on the big screen, not to be corny. Uh, I just really like certain moments of character development here, I think really work. I think there's you know, Captain America slash Sam Wilson coming to terms with his role amidst kind of a society that's kind of discarded him and,
Hmm.
carrying the torch for his forefather, the former Captain America who was, basically exiled and treated like an outcast despite what he did. So I do think there's some interesting moments of contextualization. It's not quite as strong as like what Ryan Coogler accomplished with both the Black Panther films, but I like that at least there's attempts there. The movie overall, I like it. Do I love it? No. I think it's solid, albeit kind of light, fluffy, forgettable. I do like Anthony Mackie a lot, as like I mentioned. I think Harrison Ford, anytime you can wake him up out of bed, it's a great decision. I mean, he's just great here as this kind of sniveling, warmongering politician who's just justifying every decision along the way. And then as he gets to evolve into a more villainous role as the movie goes along, it's really kind of fun to see him kind of play this part. It feels like he would have played 20 years ago. But yeah, I don't know.
Hmm.
I think that what really helps this movie a lot is that the last 4 or 5 Marvel movies have been pretty bad.
Yeah, yeah. I
It,
know that is true, and maybe it's just kind of comparing it to the others, which isn't the greatest thing to do, I guess. But I mean that is it is what it is. Like this movie, I think does stand on its own more, and I do like Harrison Ford in this as well. Like you, I think the movie's kind of able to kind of explore kind of the grayer parts of his character and tie that pretty well to like again like the overall universe.
so yeah, that's
I do
something I think it did really poorly.
well.
I,
I was going to say the other aspect I was going to say was I think some of there are some there instances in the movie where I think it tries to draw parallels to kind of the real world climate, and it does so kind of simplistically and pretty obvious. So those aspects I wasn't really happy with his
I think it's
character.
clunky. It has this. It wants to push the boundary, but then it doesn't want to. It wants to take one step forward, but then it takes a step back.
Yeah,
I just thought the movie. I don't know. I didn't want to say it was like wimpy, but I just didn't think it had the gall or the nerve to really push
yeah.
forward
No,
with
I
its
agree with that.
vision, which I thought was disappointing because there are moments that I think show more substance than especially what we've seen in the last couple of Marvel movies. And I think the big thing with Marvel is they just got too enamored with the multiverse and we can tie this together with this and
Yeah,
this. And I think people just got kind of lost in that. And the joke I've always made is that like it made certain movies and shows feel like their homework. It's like
yeah,
I always joked with Ryan when he had to watch Falcon before this. It's like, oh, you got to study for the test, the new Falcon or the new Captain America movie. You got to watch the show and you got to watch this.
yeah,
This movie's especially bizarre in that regard because it has all these callbacks to the
yeah.
2008 Incredible Hulk movie, which is probably the most forgotten about MCU movie. I actually think it's pretty good. But
Mhm.
the fact that it wasn't a big hit and Edward Norton didn't stay as the Hulk, most people kind of look at that as like kind of the ugly stepchild of the MCU, and that now you're relying upon it as this major mechanism for plot. I found that really goofy as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is still like that broader problem with Marvel, and I think it's still evident here where, um, there's the movie itself, but then it also, has these callbacks and also kind of at the simultaneously kind of tries to, I think, set the foundation for things to come. And that's a balancing act. I don't think like Marvel's been able to execute, and I still don't think they were able to kind of execute it here because I think some of the things they're including in here, it just feel it's at the expense of some of the it's at the expense of some of the side characters in this movie, who aren't as, I think, developed as Harrison Ford and Anthony Mackie's characters are.
Yeah, actually, I really liked his new Falcon, played by Danny Ramirez. Joaquin Torres is his name in the film. I think
Mm,
they had a really bubbling chemistry.
yeah.
I like that they didn't like try to force it to be exactly like what Falcon and Winter Soldier were and what Falcon and Captain America were. It feels fresh. It feels like it's its own dynamic.
Mm,
And I really like the action scenes here. They felt tactile. They felt more close quarters. Kind of an espionage, tactile bent to them. And I like that kind of tactician stuff. And I think having Sam Wilson slash this new Captain America be extremely mortal, and it's brought up throughout the movie. Everyone has these powers, and you're just here busting it, and that kind of emanates in him being the ultimate emblem of what a hero is, because he's not hiding behind Doctor Strange's cape or
yeah.
Spider-Man's webs. He's just busting it, and given all the kind of man-made power he has in him. So I think there is some kind of rousing inspiration from that, and I think the movie has moments where it taps into that. The thing with this movie for me, it's like glimmers work, glimmers work as a whole. I don't think it does anything particularly revelatory or
Mm,
interesting with the superhero subgenre, but I do think it's a solid base hit. I think, and maybe people are just sick of Marvel. That's why this is like the third worst reviewed MCU movie. But to me, it feels a little unjustified and unfair. I mean, Ant-Man and the Wasp and Thor: Love and Thunder were like two of the worst movies I've ever seen. Like visually incompetent.
mm,
They look like a ugly acid trip. It was like Spy Kids 3D or something. It was
yeah.
like 2003. It's like, what is going on here? So I don't get the hate that's kind of going on in the internet.
Yeah, I don't either. I mean, I skipped those, the Ant Man that you're talking about. But I don't know. I mean, it seems like too, like some of the things I've read, it seems like people have the problems they have with the movie are problems like I've had in the past. But I just don't think they're as glaring in this movie as others. Like Deadpool, Wolverine, which I think had better reviews. So,
Well, you touched
um,
upon this too. This movie does, even though it does rely upon the kind of weird '08 Hulk references and stuff like that, and
yeah,
also has the giant thing from Eternals. You remember
yeah,
I forget what it
yeah.
was called, but it's just
The
this giant thing popping out of the
Celestial.
planet. Um, so it's like this movie, they almost took out like all the garbage. It's like, what are all the loose Marvel plot threads that we can kind of just take care of? And I will at least give the writer directors credit here for personalizing it, or putting in a package that's digestible. But I do think this movie gets the short end of the stick of having such a messy narrative.
Mhm. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, at least it was also an hour and 40. I honestly was shocked coming out of it. I was like, I thought, I thought this was like over 2 hours. So
It
that was
was
kind
2 hours
of
on the dot, I think.
it was okay. Yeah, that makes sense. But
Yeah, but I'm at least curious to see where this character is able to grow on the big screen going
mhm,
forward. Obviously, he'll play a part in the new Avengers, and
yeah,
I think Anthony Mackie does a good job. And I'm glad this movie's done well at the box office. It's definitely justified a sequel, so that's
mhm,
encouraging to see. And I think Marvel. I've said this in our previous episode with Dennis, but I do think Marvel's going to rebound a little bit. I think Fantastic Four and Thunderbolts, which come out this summer, both look really promising. So we'll
mhm.
see what's in store there. But for today, I give Captain America: Brave New World a B minus.
Yeah, you know what? I'm at a B. Honestly, I enjoyed myself more than I've had in quite some time in a Marvel movie. I love Anthony Mackie in this. I love Harrison Ford in this. I like how it was more grounded. So I'm gonna give it a B.
Yeah,
Honestly,
one thing I want to add, I want to give director Julius Ona credit.
yeah.
There was a lot of behind the scene rumors that this was a movie plagued by, the cutting hands at Marvel and kind of the
Mm,
producer shaping it. and you do feel that influence. But I do think there's some great moments of filmmaking here. The director of Loose in Cloverfield Paradox, I do think he's able to bring more of a visceral element. I like the intensity of some of the close-ups. There's a scene in particular with the old Captain America, Isaiah Bradley, played by Carl Lumbly, which
Mm.
is I think really well done. But yeah, this was fun. I mean, it's not gonna rock the boat, and I think that's part of the problem is people have that expectation post Endgame and Infinity War and Black Panther where every Marvel movie needs to be like fantastic. It's like sometimes they're just gonna be okay. It's like, and that's why I think as a comic book fan I'm more okay with that, because I read comic books, some are amazing, some are just a good yarn, and you flip through the pages and have a good time. This felt like a comic book in that regard. It's kind of a B story, but it works. It's a decent enough action espionage page turner on the big screen.